The honourable member from Kildonan St. Paul.
After 9 years of NDP Liberals, violent crime is up and police have had enough, Mr. Speaker. Frontline officers in Toronto, York, Vancouver, Surrey are all slamming the Prime Minister for his self-congratulatory social media campaign where he promoted his failed handgun policy that has done nothing to stop violent gun crime, which is up, in fact, by 116% since the Liberals took power 9 years ago. When is the Prime Minister going to stop patting himself on the back for his failures and start listening to police?
The Honourable Minister for Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, one important difference between our government and the Conservative Party is we don't believe assault-style military firearms have their place on Canadian streets. We have made those firearms, Mr. Speaker, illegal. We're taking steps to compensate law-abiding gun owners that purchase these rifles, particularly so we can remove them from the streets. That's something that police officers in my conversations have been very supportive of, and they're very worried, Mr. Speaker, that the Conservative Party have plans to, in fact, evacuate all those important measures. That's not in the interest of public safety.
That's right.
The honourable member from Kildonan St. Paul.
You know, Mr. Speaker, I'm going to let the police association speak for themselves to that Liberal minister and to this Liberal Prime Minister. From Surrey, BC, quote, the federal handgun freeze fails to address the real issue, which is the surge of illegal firearms coming across our border ending up in the hands of violent criminals. From Vancouver, BC, quote, stopping legal sales won't stop criminals from getting guns illegally. You're only restricting law-abiding citizens while doing little to address actual gun violence. When is the Prime Minister going to stop working against police, stop going after law-abiding citizens, and start going after the real problem, criminals? When are they?
The Honourable Minister for Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, I was surprised that our colleague raised the issue of border security. Our government, unlike the Conservative government previously, has invested precisely so the Canadian Border Services Agency would be able to interdict these illegal firearms crossing our borders. Mr. Speaker, we work with the RCMP, their policing partners, and Border Services. The Conservatives cut the funding to these agencies, laid off hundreds of Border Services agents, and had, in fact, plans to cut another 800. The good news, Mr. Speaker, is they lost the 2015 election. We reinvested in those important priorities for Canadians, and will continue to do so.
The honourable member from Durham.
Mr. Speaker, after 9 years of NDP Liberals, crime is up because the Prime Minister's policies are failing. The Toronto Police Association says that violent crime is up 78% since these Liberals came into power. Shootings are up 45% since last year. Gun-related homicides up 62% since last year. So when will the Prime Minister start listening to police associations across Canada and admit he's adding to the crime wave, not fighting it?
That's right. Good question.
The Honourable Minister of Justice and Procurator General.
Mr. Speaker, I appreciate that member's contributions to the House. I just don't appreciate the hypocrisy. What I would say is that assault-style rifles aren't used for hunting deers. That's why we're taking them out of circulation. What I would also say with respect to guns and gangs is that if you don't want guns in our society, then you need to regulate the border. That's why we've invested over $390 million into the CBSA, exact money amounts that were cut by that party. He wasn't there yet, so I can't fault him in particular, but I will fault his party for not doing anything to keep our border safe and to keep guns out of our country.
The honourable member from Durham.
Mr. Speaker, the Liberal Minister of Justice continues to reveal just how out of touch this government is. And we have real-time evidence of it. Just less than 3 hours ago, there was a shooting in Toronto near Shepherd and Yonge, not far actually from the Minister of Justice's riding. And in that situation, a person is now lying in the hospital in life-threatening condition. So when will this government actually take responsibility for the crime that it's causing and listen to the police?
That's right. Good question.
The Honourable Minister for Justice and Attorney General.
I can assure that member that I listen to the police all of the time. And you know what they tell me? They tell me that when you take guns out of circulation, what you do is you help on things like gender-based violence and domestic violence that occurs because women are getting killed because guns are in the homes. When you pass a bill like C-21, you disable that from happening because you ensure that you're keeping women in this country safe. That is a priority, or should be a priority, for this entire Parliament. It's just really shocking that that member doesn't get it.
The honourable member from Kelowna Lake Country.
After 9 years of these NDP Liberals, taxes are up, costs are up, crime is up, and time is up. And violent gun crime is up 116% in Canada in just 9 years. Now, following the Prime Minister's out-of-touch comments, the Vancouver Police Association stated the Prime Minister is, quote, not aware of the ongoing gang war here in BC, which is putting both our members and public at risk on a daily basis. Right. Will the NDP Liberals listen to police and finally admit that their soft on crime policies are leading to the crime wave in Canada?
Right.
The Honourable Minister for Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, one thing that's definitely up are slogans in this House of Commons. Mr. Speaker, we have said clearly that we will support law enforcement both at the RCMP and in terms of their partners in policing, including police in British Columbia, municipal police in British Columbia. That's why we renewed the Guns and Gangs program, Mr. Speaker, that precisely puts money in the hands of these brave women and men who serve in municipal and provincial police forces so they can do the exact work that my colleague pretends she wants them to be able to do.
That's right.
The honourable member from Kelowna Lake Country.
Well, Mr. Speaker, it's the police themselves that are saying that the policies of this Liberal government are a failure. And Conservatives are listening to police who know the facts about gun violence, public safety, and the real impact in our communities. Now, following the Prime Minister's out-of-touch comments, the Surrey Police Union stated, quote, the federal handgun freeze fails to address the real issue, the surge of illegal firearms coming across our borders and ending up in the hands of violent criminals, unquote. 85% of seized firearms are traced back to the United States. So why doesn't the Prime Minister listen to our law enforcement by starting to crack down on smuggled guns from the U.S.?
The Honourable Minister for Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, our government did precisely that. It listened to law enforcement professionals who asked us to reverse the cuts of the previous Harper government to the women and men who serve in our Border Services Agency and who do that excellent work at border crossings across the country. We also invested, Mr. Speaker, in the RCMP, who have responsibility between border crossings and who work with American partners on organized crime. We're doing the very work that our colleague on the other side pretends that she thinks is important. Why doesn't she support our government in removing assault-style firearms off the streets of Canada?
That's right.
The honourable member from Toronto, St. Paul's.
After 9 years of NDP Liberals, taxes are up, costs are up, crime is up, time is up. The Prime Minister wants to pat himself on the back, but the data and the Toronto Police Association say he's out of touch. Last year in Toronto, we saw a 45% increase in shootings and a 62% increase in gun-related homicides. In St. Paul's, 2 people were murdered in Oakwood. A police officer was shot in Yonge and Eglinton, and armed home invasions happen every day. The Liberals make life easy for career criminals with their catch and release bail policies. When will this government finally come up with a plan to stop the crime and bring home safe streets?
The Honourable Minister of Justice and Attorney General.
Mr. Speaker, if that member expects us to apologize for taking assault-style weapons off of the streets, he's not going to get that. If that member thinks we're going to apologize for keeping women safe from domestic violence by implementing a handgun freeze, he's not going to get that apology. If that member thinks we're not going to take seriously the mental health impacts of suicides that are related to guns being in the homes, he's not going to get that apology. What he should do is actually think about what the police are asking for. They're asking for help with keeping Canadians safe. That's what we do every day on this side of the House.